viewers as we begin our third installment of the Youth Talk series exclusively here on Hyder TV, where we sit down to discuss issues facing the youth in the modern era. We are joined once again. We have the honor of being joined by Maulana Raza Hussain Zaidi of the Toronto GTA area. And as mentioned earlier, Maulana brings an extensive wealth of knowledge and experience dealing with such issues, both in the North American context as well as in the European context. And of course, he brings a very special and unique perspective with his religious knowledge, with his worldly experience, and his old, mashallah, personality. And we were discussing issues in regards to identity and belonging. And yesterday we had covered the issue of attending gatherings at whether they be work or at school, where we are surrounded by both Muslims and non-Muslims. And they're mixed gatherings. So their non-Mahrams are present. There may be alcohol, there may be music that is present here. And for one reason or another, we feel obligated that we need to attend these meetings. And we had discussed, some of the tips and strategies and ways to approach these in a way that we maintain our Islamic identity and our Islamic moral teachings and guidelines. And first and foremost, Maulana had mentioned that always remember that your Imam is with you. Imam Zamana, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Fajr Sharif is there for us. He's there with us. He's supporting us. He's helping us. And it's a simple matter of reaching out to him, whether that's in your heart, whether it's a small pep talk with yourself. And then we talked about some brief strategies in terms of, if you are in such gatherings and, there is some sort of feelings that are being aroused, or if there is a discussion that's taking place that, perhaps is not exactly within the lines of Islamic moral teachings, how to, take a brief break, to give yourself a break, excuse yourself and return, as well as making sure that you conduct yourself in a balanced way, keeping yourself in line and your behavior and your words in line with Islamic moral teachings. Maulana, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for joining us once again, and thank you for the insightful and in-depth discussion that we had yesterday. Just carrying following up on that from yesterday. To start off with, Maulana, is it permissible for us to, first of all, even attend such gatherings? And if we do attend those sort of gatherings, if you could briefly summarize, the guidelines and tips that you can help us that you can share with us to help navigate those type of interactions.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج. Well, very briefly, if I could summarize it, I think some of the gatherings, of course, are haram. For example, if there's a party where there is just music and alcohol and you just have to be there, that gathering in itself, being a part of such a gathering, is not permissible according to Shia Islam. But then there are gatherings where you can squeeze a way into it and find a way of being there, could be halal. For example, if you're not sitting on the table where alcohol is being served and you're not eating on that table, and you're eating somewhere else where there's no alcohol, for example, or for example, if there is no a party going on where there's, for example, music and dance and all of those things, and you're not part of it, then okay, then it's fine. But a mixed gathering, if, for example, you have to be there and it's very necessary for you to be there, then you have to know your limits, and if you're in those limits, then there is no problem for you to participate in such gathering.
Jazakallah. Thank you for that summary. That was a very good synopsis of some of the stuff that we had discussed yesterday. Maulana, touching upon this issue of identity. If we take it one step, I guess, higher, you could say, and we look at it from the lens of identity and nationality. So, for example, many of us are very proud to be citizens in the countries that we live in. Although we might not have been born in these countries, perhaps we've emigrated from other countries to these countries, or maybe we are born in these countries, such as the case with me, myself. We actively participate in civic duties such as voting, jury duty, maybe even military service. And we feel like, we are of this land, we are from this land, and we are for this land. And it forms the core of of our sense of self-identity. However, we're also practicing Muslims, and we understand that our Islamic duties are a priority. So sometimes this leads us to a bit of a conflict in terms of how we view ourselves and how we identify ourselves. So, Mike, could you please help us in terms of understanding, should we identify as Canadians, Americans, Britons, Europeans first, and Muslims secondly? Or should we always maintain that we are Muslims first and our nationality comes second?
Well, I don't think there's any first or second into it. It's a fact that we are Shias and we're Shia Muslims. And it is also a fact that, people living in Canada are Canadian citizens. So I don't think there can be any contradiction into, both of these things. And whatever comes first, I don't think that's really something that we should say that, we're Canadians first or something like that. Well, let me put it that way. You are a male, right? So your gender comes first, or your citizenship. Well, you yourself, whoever you are, however you identify yourself, you are also a Canadian citizen. So if you are a
Right.
Shia Muslim, you're also a Canadian citizen. That's the first thing that I want to say. And the other thing is, like, if you're a good Shia Muslim, wherever you are, whichever part of the world you live in, if you are a good practicing Shia Muslim, you will be someone that others will benefit from you, and you will be there for the good. I'll give you an example. You mentioned about the military and all of those things that the Shias should be, and I always encourage that. Shias should always participate in all of the government's institutions that exist, because these guys are Canadian citizens and they need to participate, especially in politics. They should. Some people come and ask me these questions like, Maulana, is it halal to participate into politics? It's not even. Some people do not even have that kind of like vision that I would want to say is, well, you should have some sort of a vision. With why do you think that joining politics would be haram? Which marja, for example, today says that if you are a politician and a Shia politician in the United States of America or Canada or, for example, Europe for that matter, it is not permissible. It is haram. Where? Give me one fatwa. It's not there. So why do we want to become like, we know more than the marajim that exist at the moment? Other than that, well, I wanted to give you an example. There was a retired army guy in Pakistan, and he told me that he was posted along with some of his other friends who were also soldiers, posted in Siachen. And he said that because he was a Shia, and he was also kind of like he used to voluntarily be a zakir, reciting, the majalis of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, azab. So when the 10 days of Muharram were during his duty, when he was in Siachen, he was serving as a soldier over there. He spoke to his senior, and he said, well, there are like about 7 or 8 Shias, and we want to hold a majlis. And he said that we will do our duty, but in our off time, we just ask you to give us permission to hold a majlis for, let's say, for 45 minutes or an hour for 10 days. So they were granted this permission. And he said, well, the people who know a little bit about Siachen, they know that there are no buildings there, right? So you people are just living there and confined to their little camps. So they're most of the time that when they're on duty, they're outside in open air, sitting on top of the glaciers, right? So it's like in extreme cold weather where they have to do all of that. So he said, well, I made a mimbar of ice, and I sat on top
Subhanallah.
of it, and I recited the majlis.
Wow.
He said, I recited the majlis, and 6 guys or 7 guys sat before me. They listened, they cried, and we had our 10 days of Muharram. And he said, well, after 10 days, because I considered myself to be a zakir, I was expecting some niyaz, right? So I said, who's going to give me niyaz here? And he said, I got my niyaz, not in the form of money, but in the form of appreciation that came from the senior. He said on the 11th of Muharram or the 12th of Muharram, he asked the senior, he asked all of them, all of the people who were Shias and non-Shias alike, he said, I want to say something to you. And he said, in the 10 days, I've found out one thing, and that is that Shias are on the right side and we're on the wrong side. He said, I'm ashamed to say that. But let me tell you something. Shias, in the 10 days, they did their duty better than the others, even though they were going through Muharram, they were going through these 10 days, and they were holding majalis and everything. They did better than the others. And when you talk about duty, they were much better. And we saw that there were people who were stealing stuff from others. There were fights. There were so many complaints. But from these Shias, there was a 0 complaint that I received. And they were just on the top of the line. They were the best of the best. And he says, it just stands to prove that Shias are better Muslims than us. And he says, when he said that, I said, I've got my niyaz. So that is my message. That is my message. Wherever you are, if you're a Shia good Muslim, if you're a Shia Muslim, and you're following the teachings of your Imam Masumin, wherever you go, people are going to envy you, because you will be the best of the best. You will not bring harm to anyone in any way, in any form. And you will be for the good, and you will stand out to be the best.
Jazakallah, Maulana. Thank you for that. That was a very an insightful story, and
Sorry,
it goes to
let me just add. Sorry, just want to add one thing. So, if we say, coming back to the identity, we are Shia Muslims, identified as Shia Muslims. That is our identity that comes before anything in the world. And then we associate ourselves with anything else. And when we do, people know that these people are good and they're not bad.
Subhanallah. No, you're absolutely right. It reminds me of
I'm not saying we're the chosen people. I'm just saying
right.
we choose to do good.
Well said, yes.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to our ability, our willingness, and our involvement in civic institutions within the countries that we live in, that we're proud to be a part of. We hear about the debates about, should you vote? You live in a Western liberal democracy, and they've replaced God with the state, and it's a nation of kuffar and disbelievers, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think, and you alluded to it, that we need to have a voice, and we need to be represented, and that's one of the, at a very basic level, it's one of the ways that we can go out and do our tabligh as well. Because when they see Muslim politicians, when they see, people who are practicing the deen of the Ahlul Bayt, through their actions, through their words, through their akhlaq, it has an impact, especially when you are at the political level, because there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, eyes on you. And these things get noticed, especially in the modern day where majority of your politicians are involved in one scandal or another, and they're really out there to serve themselves as opposed to genuinely serving their people. You can really have an impact with those akhlaq. It brings to mind a story that I heard from a friend of mine who volunteers at a soup kitchen in downtown Toronto, and he had been doing this for quite some time. And one day, one of the patrons of this soup kitchen asked him, what's your name? And he gave his name, and he said, my name is Syed Hassan. And he said, Hassan, you're not from around here, are you? He said, well, I'm born and raised here. And he said, yeah, but you're not like one of these other people over here, right? You're a Muslim. And he said, well, yes, I am a Muslim. He's like, I heard that you guys are big on charity. I heard that you guys are big on community service. And he said, well, yeah, that's what I'm here to do. And he said, I'm very glad to see you here. Another personal story that I have, I was getting onto the subway across from U of T downtown, the University of Toronto, campus that's in downtown Toronto. And I was just I was on my way to get into the subway, and there's people sitting on the floor, homeless people, whatnot. And one gentleman had come up to me, and there's a Tim Hortons right at the corner, right down, literally next door to the subway entrance. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, can you get me something to eat from inside there?" So I said, "How about I give you the money and you go do it yourself?" Because I was in a bit of a rush. Um, and he said they won't let me in, because I've been in there too many times and they just kick us out. So I said, I get it. I'm in a bit of a rush, but I gotta go. He said, "Oh yeah, you immigrants, you guys are all, too busy in your own lives." Um, and that really got me. So I stopped. I went inside. I got him, a bagel and coffee, and I came back out and I gave it to him. And he was shocked. And he said that, after I said what I said to you, you still went ahead and did that for me. I was like, yeah,
Wow.
I was raised different. These are my teachings. He turned and he says, "What's your name?" And I said, my name is Zain, but part of my name is Muhammad. And he said, "Muhammad, oh, you're a Muslim." He said, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm not surprised you stopped and went back." And that was literally, the highlight of my day, if not my year. To know that, I had that impact, not just me personally, but that, that homeless person was aware of the fact that Muslims are generous and Muslims are charitable, Muslims are kind, and that Muslims will go out their way for you. And that would not have happened had we relegated ourselves to our houses, had we avoided interaction with society in general. And I think it's very important, that, the viewers, ourselves, we all understand that we need to be a part and integrate into the society and be out there. That's how we spread the word, and that's how we attract people to our deen. I've heard stories from many of my friends as well, of how, just interacting with their peers in colleges and universities, have caused people to convert, because they spent time with these practicing Muslims and saw their gentleness, their politeness, their positivity, and they were just attracted by that. They've never read a word of the Quran, they've never read a word of the sayings of the prophets or the imams, but just from the akhlaq, the mannerisms, the way that you present yourself, that positive energy that you exude as a Muslim, as a lover of the Ahlul Bayt, it has a great attraction. Um, and Maulana, there's a lot of pressure out there, whether it's at work or whether it's in school, or whether it's in some other social context, to identify and act as this Canadian first or American first or Britain first. And a lot of times, a big part of the cultures over here is going out to public events where there's alcohol being served, there's loud music, there's members of the opposite gender who are dressed inappropriately. Many of the topics of conversation are inappropriate as well. Um, and when you go there fully dressed, fully covered, and you're not participating in, obviously you're not drinking the alcohol, you're not dancing to the music, you're not talking about the same things in the same way as your peer group is talking. It kind of leaves you a little alienated. It kind of leaves you out. How do we navigate those type of interactions where we don't necessarily want to become one like them by stooping to the level of using immoral language or doing immoral actions, but at the same time trying to integrate, trying to be a part of the society? How do we reconcile these two seemingly opposite moral and ethical constructs?
Well, you when you identify yourself as a Shia Muslim, and anything that you do will be associated with the religion that you carry. Whatever you do, people will be watching you. Well, they would say Shias do this, so therefore the religion Shia asks them to do this. So you have to be very careful when we move around, and especially when people do know who we are. Uh, like Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, the hadith is there, kunu lana zayna, wala takunu lana shayna. So keeping that in mind, that be someone that we should be proud, that we can be proud of. We Ahlul Bayt can be proud of, but not someone that we would be shamed because of you. So, these are strong words coming from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So therefore, we have to be very careful what we do, where we go, when we are in amongst people. But kind gestures, like you have just just mentioned a while ago, when I was in Sheffield, and I was as a resident alim in that in the Imambarg of Sheffield and Hyderia, some of the Iranians, they told me that, you know, when the winter comes, we take care of the homeless people and we serve them with soup, hot soup. You know, the Iranian hot soup, you might have had that. It's really good. It's really tasty as well. So they said we hired a church, and you know, we offered all of the homeless people to come and get the soup from us. And they said they were so happy when they had the soup, and they said that, oh, who is this? Who's asked you to do this? Who's doing it? So the Iranian guy said, I told him, I said, I'm not doing this. This is from Imam Hussein. So he said, who should we thank? He said, just thank Imam Hussein. So he said, whenever they would have the soup, they would leave and they would say, thank you, Imam Hussein. And they would say it so loudly. And that had an effect. You know, the very word, the word of Imam Hussein, thanking Imam Hussein, that itself carries the blessings. So if you can associate whatever your kind gesture is with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the result that you see, you would be amazed by the results. And the results, he said, we saw the result. And it was after about a couple of days, these guys returned and they said, we want to convert. Just by this one single gesture. Because because of the kind gesture being associated with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the blessings of Allah came, right? And Allah says, Inna Allah yahdi man yasha. Allah guides whoever He wishes. So when He sees someone thanking Imam Hussein, it is the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives them this guidance. And they come towards them and they say, we want to convert. So, well, during Ramadan, for example, we are going through Ramadan. It is said that if you recite just one verse of Quran in Ramadan, it is like reciting the whole of Quran. The ajr is that much. But if whatever you recite, you gift it to Imam of your times, Imam Zaman, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And you can imagine the reward that you're going to get and the blessing that you're going to get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, whatever we do, like you mentioned, if you go to these places where we are not supposed to be, well, I said in the beginning, you know, there are certain places where you should not be there. For example, if there's dance and music and alcohol, like you said, what is the Shia of Ali doing there?
MashaAllah, yes, that's a very good point.
So if you excuse yourself and you're not there, later on people would say, well, he's a very kind man, he's a very nice person, he's professional, he does his work really professionally, there's so much goodness in him, he's the perfect guy, but there's only one thing wrong: he doesn't party, he doesn't go to the party. What's wrong with that? I think a good Shia of Maulana Ali can deal with this. He doesn't
That's something you want to be known for.
Right. I don't. I identify myself as a Shia Muslim. I don't party. That's it.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, it reminds me of the saying, be the change that you want to see in the world. So it really starts with you yourself and your own conduct. Maulana, very briefly in the last 2 minutes that we have over here, for our younger viewers. So we've been talking about, you know, for your college university students, people who are just graduated, who are perhaps in high school and going out, interacting in these public areas. Our younger viewers, however, we're talking about those who are just preteen or entering into their teenage. A lot of their time is spent playing games online. And these are online games, and they have actual social community networks online as well. If you can briefly, with the last 2 minutes that we have left over here, outline some of the Islamic guidelines and teachings for how we should conduct ourselves while we are gaming online, as well as you know, the types of games that we play on our devices, whether it's a tablet or a phone. Being a teacher at madrasa, I do see children, believe it or not, in classes or during their breaks where they're actually playing you know, online poker, online slot machines, and so on and so forth. And when I've questioned them, they say, well, there's no real money involved here. I'm just getting points, which I can trade up later on, or, you know, I compete with my friends online for these points. And then there's chats going on in the comments where the language is inappropriate, or perhaps there's online chatting going on where the language is inappropriate. If you could shed some light for our younger viewers here in terms of what their conduct should be like regardless of whether it's an online environment or an in-person environment?
You know, it is a global issue. This issue is really serious because wherever you go, you find kids, teenagers, adults, old people. They're not even speaking to each other. There's a family of like 6 people sitting on a dining table, and they're all looking at their cell phones. They're not even speaking to each other. Now, and before the cell phones came into the market, you used to have people used to come and greet people for if they were Christians for Christmas, if they were Muslims for Eid, you know, and they would like if there's some thing that you want to convey to any other person, you would come and say it on their face. So there was a human transaction, a human interaction with each other. Now you just send a message. Happy Eid, Happy Christmas. What is this? And then, you know, you think that's enough. And talking about the games, okay, games, there's nothing wrong with playing games. Kids play games. If it's online or, you know, playing soccer or football or whatever, that's okay. That's fine. Yeah. But if you're doing that online, that's also fine. It's not haram. But there are certain things that are haram in those things. For example, like you rightly mentioned, swearing at each other. That is, if you're online or if you're not online, that's haram. Listening to music, that's not right. Doing anything at the time of namaz. You should pray your namaz on time, and then you're just playing games. That's it. Time for majlis, and you forget the majlis. Time for Jummah prayers, and you forget the Jummah prayers. You go to the Jummah prayers. You're not listening to the sermon. You're playing your games, right? You go to school. Your teacher is saying something, and at the end of the day, you get bad grades because you've been just playing on your phones, and you're hiding the phone from your teacher. Your teacher didn't know. So that problem is there for everyone. And the kids themselves know that it's not really healthy. I don't think it's a healthy thing. Even it takes, even if you talk to some of the child psychologists, they say, well, it is having a really bad effect. In fact, I was listening to a news report a few days ago, and they said, well, you know, kids are developing some certain sort of psychological problems because of these online games and all of these things that they are doing all the time. So it is serious, but you know, it's not like if we just discuss it on Hyder TV for once for 2 or 3 minutes, the problem is going to go away. It is so big and it is so huge. You need a strategy. You need lots of people, everyone, to put their heads together, regardless of whether you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim or whoever you are. Put your heads together and, you know, come up with a strategy like Australia did. I've heard, you know, they've banned certain kind of social media networks for teenagers, you know, so
That's right, yeah. And it really comes down to, you know, being informed yourself and then making sure that you do have a plan, as you mentioned. And it's good to know that whether you're online or in person, the teachings of Islam and our moral code doesn't change. Jazakallah, thank you so much, Maulana, for your time today and for the insightful advice and knowledge that you shared with us. Thank you to our Hyder TV viewers for tuning in. We'll see you once again tomorrow, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here, Youth Talk exclusively on Hyder TV. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.